You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network. Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Anime Crash Course, Nerd to Know Media's anime book club, effectively. I am your humble host, Kev, and with me I have two wonderful guests. To my virtual right, I have Cian.
Hello.
And to my virtual left, I have Keith.
Hello, everyone. Hey.
Okay, so this week, the topic of discussion at hand is the 2017 Kyoto Animation anime, Miss Kobayashis Dragon Maid.
Woo!
Just big all around. Okay, so before we really kind of kick into it, how about we talk about what this show is actually about, huh?
Oh God, where to begin?
Okay, we'll just go broad strokes. Effectively, so the story of Miss Kobayashis Dragon Maid goes as such. You have your everyday salary woman, Kobayashi, loves drink, computer coder by day, just a real every woman. One day, wakes up to go to work, opens the door. What's at her door? A fucking dragon.
A big fucking dragon.
Yeah, a big
dragon.
one. Like, it's sitting on the ground. Its head is at the top floor of her apartment building.
5 stories up. After, taking a bit of time to process this, she's like, nope, this is definitely a dream. I'm like, so, what can I do for you? Dragon succinctly then just turns into an anime girl and...
Maid.
Sorry, you go first, Keith.
Oh, she specifically asked, do you want to be my maid? To a dragon.
We'll get into that. That's later. This was the first moment, though.
Yeah, sorry, spoilers.
Yeah, I want to say, because, Kev, I know off the air we were talking about how I've been watching Steins Gate, where that takes like 4 episodes just to get its premise started. This one gets it down in a minute, and it's a good minute.
It is a solid, fast minute, and there's your premise. And effectively, wacky slice of life, kind of ecchi shenanigans ensue. And effectively, this is an anime sitcom,
Yeah,
which is not something you actually see a lot of. Like, things tend to have a fairly a lot of anime tend to have like a fairly kind of structured narrative through line. This is very scenario based. But before we kind of get into the real meat and potatoes of the show, like, a lot of anime tend to have like a fairly kind of structured narrative through line. This is very scenario based. But before we kind of get into the real meat and potatoes of the show, I always like to kind of do a little bit of background on this. So, originally conceived as a manga, written and illustrated, and I swear to God, whoever this is going to be terrible, by the manga author Cool Kyushinja.
Yeah.
I'm having that's a shot in the dark at that.
Wouldn't you just love your first name to be Cool? Like, how much easier would life be?
I'm sure this is a pseudonym, which ballsy effort on him if he decided to put the word cool in his pseudonym.
It's all one word. One word. It's the best.
Originally written and illustrated by Cool Kyushinja in Futabasha's monthly action magazine in 2013, and it's still currently being printed and published.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's still ongoing. So, minor success there. Things are going well. In 2017, well-renowned studio Kyoto Animations greenlight and produce a 13-episode anime series, with an additional 14th episode being later produced for the Blu-ray release of the series later that year, with Yasuhiro Takamoto as the lead series director. So, there we have it. That's the anime. And one question, and I want to kind of make this a question I want to ask at the start of every show when it's available. Subs or dubs?
I went with subs, but about halfway through, I heard about the Funimation dub and how hilarious that is. It's apparently a good dub, but they changed some of the translations, and they put in this whole thing about Quetzalcoatl talking about the patriarchy and stuff. And
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The sub off the
Oh,
bat.
yeah?
And I did because I didn't know there was a sub until saying about halfway through and when I was doing research for this. And I just kind of looked up one or two clips. They make a how to train your dragon joke. So like they're very self-aware. And that's actually, I think I love it when dub productions do that, because there is a lot of Japanese dialogue that does not straight translate.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I always prefer when they take the liberty to actually, especially with comedy. Man, comedy's hard to translate.
You absolutely have to localize it. You can't just
Yeah, and on top of that,
word
like
for word translate.
I will put this prefix first. I do not know Japanese. I have not learned it. But just across my travels, I do know that the Japanese love puns, but Japanese puns.
Yeah.
So
Have you got like an example of a Japanese
no,
pun?
I do not, because again, no idea of the language. But like it's the sort of like wordplay where it just across my travels, I do know that the Japanese love puns, but Japanese puns.
Yeah.
So
have you got like an example of a Japanese
no,
pun?
I do not, because again, no idea of the language. But like it's the sort of like wordplay where it makes no goddamn sense when you actually. It's like it's Japanese words that rhyme, but if you were literally translated, it's just a random word soup sentence.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I suppose comedy is kind of the hardest thing to get down in any genre without a language barrier anyway, because it's quite subjective. I can only imagine the nightmare of having to translate localized comedy through a culture barrier and a language barrier when it's already ridiculous into English. That is an Olympian effort.
Now, I will say, and it's funny to kind of think about this. There's I can't think of a lot of like real.
Yeah, the only other straight up comedy I can think of would be something like kind of Nozaki-kun, like something in a high school or something like that. And even then, that's very much its own subgenre.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of like straight up comedies. Like
I think the only other two I can think of. Jeez, I've entirely forgotten the name, but it was like one of them was very absurdist comedy, which works kind of no matter what the style, and the other is Konosuba, which is effectively It's Always Sunny in the Feywilds.
Yeah, and Fooly Cooly as well. Fooly Cooly would be
Okay, I'm gonna put myself out there. I have not seen Fooly Cooly.
It's a very, very easy watch. It's like 8 episodes, and every second of every episode is pure gold. And that soundtrack is the best thing you'll hear.
I've heard segments of the soundtrack actually. It does. I know bits of the pillows, and again, that's just kind of through cultural osmosis.
Exactly, yeah.
I know bits of the pillows, and again, that's just kind of through cultural osmosis.
Exactly, yeah. It's just a strong contender for probably my favorite comedy in anime. It's very westernized though. It all works sub or dub. So.
Right. Can I just illustrate something before you get onto your next point, Kev?
Sure.
Just because this has a dragon in it, this isn't a kid's show.
No, God, no.
And I feel like that is worth mentioning up front before we get any further into it.
Believe me, it was going to come up.
When the Toru, the first dragon, appears and becomes a human, essentially, first shot of her is her chest. Like, this show is typical like ecchi moe like fan service. It's not actually as overwhelming in the first few episodes, but later on there's the typical
strange.
She just pulled her
completely just bucks
her naked. Her friend. Yeah.
Very strange. Anyway, okay. We'll okay, back on track. Here we go.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Okay, so just I suppose kind of the next kind of thing to tap on with considering there's no kind of narrative through line, it's a sitcom. I suppose the best place to start is actually the characters, because they're kind of the core of these kind of series. And God, I think it's when I heard about this show first, it seemed like it sounded off the cuff, very generic, very horny, and just not that. But when you watch it, it's got a lot of depth actually, surprisingly for what it is. And I think that does kind of stem from how they've built and structured these characters. Like, I genuinely love Kobayashi as a lead, because she's a lead you don't see a lot of in these sorts of ecchi romance. These characters, like, I genuinely love Kobayashi as a lead, because she's a lead you don't see a lot of in these sorts of ecchi romance anime. Like, she for a start, she's, you know, a full ass adult, which is, God, is always a refreshing.
You don't
change
get
of
that
pace.
in a lot of female characters in Japanese anime, unless they're like mothers or something, and even then, like,
and like, even just kind of like in this kind of genre, like, it's like this genre is completely overpopulated by, like, you know, high school setting. So like, it's stuff like this and like Wotakoi, where it's set like in an office space with like just a full with like just, you know, fully grown like 30-year-old people. That's obviously more relatable to me. So I always kind of latch onto that stuff. But like, you know, first step, she wakes up, she's hungover, she's got a bad back. So like, it's all these kind of like little things that like just kind of tell really tell you who she is, which then works as a great, like, you know, she's got kind of tired, kind of jaded, kind of sarcastic, which is a fantastic counterpoint to Toru, who is bubbly, energetic, chaotic, and wild.
Yeah, that's I'm having a hard time describing her, because she's got the energy of like a wild-eyed naive, but she isn't that necessarily. Like you said, chaotic's probably the best word to describe her.
Yeah, she's just kind of like, she's really just real kind of bubbly, active, and again, considering this is a very, you know, a pretty adult show for adults with adults, hey, cool adults. Like, she's been around the block. She's a dragon. She knows what's up.
Around a very, very big block.
Just you know, quick fly around the block. It's fine. And then just as the show goes on, more characters and more dragons specifically get introduced. For Kana, bless her goddamn soul.
That's the baby Yoda.
The small child, the child
there
dragon.
Was one.
I actually have to admit, I know it's a contentious thing, but I do not like Kana at all.
Really?
I have this like weird aversion to any, like, the second like they introduce like a lolly character, and then just her introduction just turned me off like completely. Like, just I was like, fuck this. But then she did develop more, and as a character, she progressed. But that first impression just stuck with me.
Oh yeah, no, like, when you in a show like this, when you see a character like that, it's immediate red flags. Like, when you're like, oh, this is gonna go weird and uncomfortable real fast. But no, like, I think they keep her in her lane, where they keep her, you know, she kind of only ever really kind of interacts with other children. She kind of just does wholesome, cute kid things, and like, again, it's a real kind of like source of wholesome entertainment in this show that I just found really sweet and enjoyable.
And it's not entirely wholesome, though. No.
Yeah.
But a lot of the comedy, a lot of the comedy comes from like Toru just after discovering something or figuring something out about the world, trying to explain it to Kana, and just it's like in Futurama when Fry talks about the past and he's getting it completely wrong, even though he was there. It's that same.
Hey, Toru, what are those metal boxes? Oh, they're cars. You need a license to drive them. How do they work? Magic?
Exactly.
Or the swings, the human catapult things.
Oh God.
Oh, the seesaw.
Excellent. And then after her, we find out about Fafnir, who has my favorite introduction, which is just when like Kobayashi's like, or Toru was like, how do I do anything? I'll call Fafnir. Kill everyone.
Yeah, he's another one who just turns up to the door.
I think no, he shows up when they were invited to a party.
Yeah, he shows up.
I know, but the big.
Which you get a fun like kind of tsundere character in him, which is again kind of breaking norms, having a tsundere character be a male character.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's true, and he has an interesting journey of appearing initially as an antagonist, and then sort of developing into sort of more of a teenage layabout type. Even what's her name, Kobayashi, about 8 episodes in, goes, what is even your character anymore?
Exactly. Dark Souls fixer. Dark Souls and everything's good.
Hey man, you know, you find something in this world, and apparently it's Dark Souls.
That's it.
And then after Fafnir, we have Quetzalcoatl, also known as Lukua. And this is where I'm going to bring up probably my biggest criticism of the show. I really don't find her entertaining as a biggest criticism of the show. I really don't find her entertaining as a character, or at least what they did with her.
But as in her paired with the wizard boy.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the big one. So obviously there's humans being introduced as well to kind of pair with each of the dragons, and her whole thing. It's the fact that when she is introduced, she's kind of seen as like a kind of an almost well-wizened kind of older sister vibe. I'm like, okay, that can be a fun dynamic. But about 2 episodes later, she gets paired up. Like, she literally just shows up in a child's house through a magic rune, and every scene with her from then on boils down to, hey, look how horny I can make this little boy. And it wasn't funny the first time. And I'll tell you right now, it definitely wasn't funny the 5th.
Yeah, the last episode I got to watch before I was recording was where they keep randomly cutting to him dreaming about being crushed by things.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even if you haven't seen it, you can probably guess what it is.
Yeah, just, big bags of sand. Like, it's just, it truly just seems like a waste of a character for a joke that, like, it just seemed, it was just kind of unfunny. Now, in fairness to the show, it doesn't take up a whole lot of real estate.
No, it sort of comes and goes. Like,
it's a cutaway gag. So like, don't let, like, as unfunny as we've definitely made it sound, don't let it put you off watching the show if you haven't thinking it, because the core of the show is about kind of Toru and Kobayashi's relationship, which I would like to then use to segue very briefly, or not even actually that briefly, just very quickly onto how good how surprised I was at how good the gay representation in the show was.
I was going to ask about that because, like, are they overtly saying that is the way it is? Because it's certainly
it's a dance around kind of, like, in terms of like them being actually in a relationship, it's dance around, but like it's very implicitly said that both of them are attracted to each other.
Yeah, and they do say that up front in the first episode.
Yeah.
Like she says, "I love you," and it's in a physical way. Like, it's not like sort of cutesy, we all have feelings, we love each other, best friends forever type thing.
Yeah, and like it's not even like, and it's not even just kind of on her. Like, you can read into it between Makoto and Fafnir as well, like them having been roommates, and again, while not implicitly, like, sexual, there's definitely like a connection there, and the two of them, like, are happy living being together.
Yes.
Eco, is it?
Well, that was actually what kind of the most uncomfortable moment was when they go from like playing Twister to the video games. It was like, that was the only kind of red flag moment. It was like, whoa, okay, I need an adult in this room.
Yeah, there's one or two. I don't think it pushed the barrier too much. There was parts, like, it felt a little uncomfortable, but just kind of even just watching, kind of the, like, this little girl being like, oh, I guess I want to be with her. I guess I want to hug her. I thought that was kind of funny and kind of cute.
It still did justify my stance in my head.
Yeah, fair.
It's just another thing to be like, you're doing so well at being like an actual interesting character, and then that happens, and I'm like, oh. I don't know how justified that is, but I'm strong in my belief here. I'm doing so well at being like an actual interesting character, and then that happens, and I'm like, oh. I don't know how justified that is, but I'm strong in my belief here. I'm grand.
No, I thought.
Yeah. No, so you go first, Kev. Sorry.
No, it's like I kind of liked the. I don't know, just hell yeah. Go gay kids. That's kind of my stance.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I can appreciate that too.
What were you going to say?
Yeah, I suppose that's fair. I think in my head I kind of go to the fact that in a literal sense the Dragon Girl character is probably like a few thousand years old and all that kind of stuff. And like you get that in Doctor Who now and again as well. If that context slips back to the front of your mind, it suddenly kind of makes things a bit iffy, like.
Yeah, I think that there is kind of, and I think it is kind of a personal, not bias, but kind of a personal taste kind of issue where completely, if nothing shown, to be mentally and physically
Yes.
immature.
In fact, I'm really glad you brought that up because, like, there are moments which reminds me of, like, bringing my young cousins around where they just go, like, food, give me food, tug, tug, book, give me book, tug, tug. And that is how her character is without being stupid, but it's accurate to what a 6-year-old kid would be like, you know?
Yeah. What else have I got on this list? I've started
And
jumping
I should,
around.
maybe just while you're looking up your list, Kev, I should say I did really, really enjoy this show. It's got a lot of heart, and the titles of every episode are hilarious.
Whoever was doing the title cards was self-aware.
Yeah. What's it's like go to the beach, the fan service episode, comma, basically. Like, you know, all this kind of stuff. I think that's great crack.
That's the one thing I'll give this show. They're not hiding any pretenses here. This show is
yeah, and I prefer that honesty on it, like, you know, because, like, I mean, you and I, Kev, we watch the kind of Mother's Basement thing where they sometimes it'll make itself out to be like an adventure show and it actually ends up being something else, and that's a bit gross. But when it's honest about what it is and it sort of relishes in it, it's easier to kind of get on their wavelength, you know?
Yeah, like it's always easier to, like, when you know what a show is. Like, I can happily watch trash. I can happily watch garbage. I just have to know po-facedly that it is garbage going into. I don't want to expect anything and then be disappointed. If I know something's going to be trash, I'm going to watch trash, and that's okay. But that's not to say, obviously, that's not to say this show is trash. And that is, again, as for all the reasons we've noted above as to why it's a really enjoyable watch, the one thing that stands out is Kyoto Animation's animation.
Oh, yeah.
Holy hell. Like, these guys, animation.
Oh, yeah.
Holy hell. Like, these guys, I know we said it with Madhouse last month, but Kyoto are another one of those studios that are absolutely, like, god tier animators. The amount of depth they put into it, and it might not be entirely clear, like, but they've created some of the best looking shows. Like, go look up clips of Violet Evergarden. It's one of the most lavishly animated shows I've ever seen. And while kind of on the surface, Kobayashi doesn't seem like it would be one of those, there is just flickers where you can just feel the animators being like, how about I flex for a second?
Yeah, they threw their budget at very specific scenes, but, like, every frame of, like, any Kyoto show you watch is, like, you could take any frame and it'd be like a perfect wallpaper. It all looks great.
Oh yeah, and, like, it's various kind of, and then once or twice they're like, how about we throw an action scene in here? And it is rivaling, like, Dragon Ball Z finale levels, just big.
Yeah, except for the battles last maybe a minute, opposed to, like, as opposed to Dragon Ball Z that takes like 7 episodes to do one battle.
And you know what? There's a case to be made that Dragon Ball Z episodes should last a second.
I'd argue that as well, yeah.
But, like, I mean, it kind of ties into the One Punch Man episode last week where it's like the animation is top tier, but it's top tier used creatively. So, like, it's got that thing where it's like, you know, Saitama will be incredible detail 1 minute and then kind of pencil sketch the next. And I think this does this as well with the dragons being incredible, like, Tales from Earthsea looking things. But then when they're humans, they're almost like kind of quite sketchily drawn. But then when they're humans, they're almost like kind of quite sketchily drawn. And that must be by design, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And, like, I forgot to mention this back when I brought up the original manga, but when you look up the actual manga art style, it's a very specific, very round, kind of cartoony style that's actually very different from what Kyoto went and did. Like, it's very kind of bubbly, just a real kind of rounded edges, bubbly style, very sketchy.
It looks very 80s.
It looks very 80s for being 2013. And actually, just to say, like, I did actually read a couple of chapters of it, and it's very much the same basic, you know, structure where it's, you know, just kind of chapters. There's a little arc. There's, again, chapters for like half a sitcom episode, and it's got a very kind of, like, very sketchy, not perfect, you know, illustration style, but what saves it, the framing. Just no, like, and I mean, like, the paneling, the comic frame paneling, like, it's just they Cool Q Sinja, I'll get that name sometime, knows how to frame knows the arts of comics to know how to frame a joke on one page.
Okay.
And like, I think that timing definitely kind of got translated. Like, the timing definitely got translated over to the anime, but Kyoto definitely just took the structure of it and made it their own stylistically, for sure.
Yeah, like, watching it, you can tell it's based on a series of shorts because every episode feels like two and a half little comics where they've kind of hammered a frame onto it. Again, it's a bit like what they did with One Punch Man, where it was like a whole lot of, like, a lot of the comics were not One Punch Man, sorry me, the one about the psychic by the same author. The one about the psychic by the same author.
Oh, Mob Psycho.
Mob Psycho, yes. Yeah. Mob Psycho, when you read it, is a series of like 8 to 10 page shorts, and they kind of hammered a shape into 20-minute episodes. It kind of feels like this got a similar treatment to that.
Yeah, I think it can depend. Like, if it's I think that kind of depends on the source. Like, if a source is very episodic, chapter to chapter, that's always going to shine through when you try to translate it.
And when they have maybe 3 minutes to spare in their time, they also do something that happens in manga a lot, where it's like, oh, I have 4 pages, I'll just put in a 4-page quick joke, and that's it.
Yeah,
and they do that a lot, and especially in the later episodes, where there'll be just like halfway through or at the end, it'll just throw in an extra, like, here's a 2-minute
well,
episode.
by like over the halfway point, your cast of characters it takes till like episode 8 for
that. Now that we're about like halfway through recording, also Elma's in this show. A character that is very, like, consistently across the opening shows up maybe 2/3 of the way through the show, which is a real disappointment because I actually really enjoy her as a character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they actually say that, like, again, going back to the translated titles, like, for her episode, it's like Elma shows up and then brackets like at last, you know, or something like that. Finally, yeah.
And like again, like, she's kind of inserted, you know, as for a start being like the lawful good to Toru's chaotic neutral, which is kind of a fun rivalry there, and then having her kind of like be, you know, now in Kobayashi's kind of office space, learning, you know, how a human office works. That's a fun dynamic, and I really wished I could see more of that.
That's true, but at the same time, her presence makes Toru less likable, to me at least. So I'm glad she was. So I'm glad she wasn't introduced in like episode 3, and that became like a huge ingredient of the series. You know?
Are you saying like that you don't like Toru kind of as an antagonist in that?
I don't like that Toru kind of gets jealous and is forced to be a less likable character. If that makes sense, I think they used it as sparingly as possible, so it didn't bother me. But if it was a function of the series, that would get under my skin a bit.
I get that.
And with Elma, like, going back to how like Fafnir is cured by Dark Souls, Elma's like pure, like, I'm here to save you, stops the second she gets food, and I can really relate with that. Like,
listen,
she's
whatever.
The hangriest.
We all get that. Whatever goal we had in mind, boy, as soon as a donut comes out, that whatever idea we had went out the window. All right.
Can I just? No, I was going to say the episode that really hooked me was, I think, possibly episode 6 or 7, where they go to Japan's equivalent of a Comic-Con, and like you see the characters not only just sort of being able to kind of be themselves as dragons in an open environment because everyone's in costume, but also bringing up the fact that actually they're not comfortable hiding 100% of the time in the human world. I thought that was like a really, really nice emotional beat that was earned in a series that had been kind of frivolous, more or less, up to that point.
You know, I entirely forgot about that part. That's, and like again, I now that you bring it back to me, I watched it. I was like, oh, that's a really, you know, there is a fantasy world, and characters are obviously flagrantly traveling between whatever, you know, dimension barrier there is.
Yeah.
But like they're, obviously people haven't discovered that yet, so they're doing a good job at hiding it. So it does kind of build out the world and the universe they've created.
Yeah, and actually I love how big plot points are jokes. Like the rival Elma, was it? She comes through because like she went to the Toru went to the Dragon World to get a snack. Like that is just brilliant to me. To win a sandwich making competition or something.
Oh yeah, that was that one.
You have nothing else to do on a Saturday? Do you like nerd things? Now check out Nerd to Know Basis here on Phoenix 92.5 FM, 5 PM to 6 PM, and then head over to nerdtoknowmedia.com for all of our shows as part of the Nerd to Know Media radio network.
Okay. I suppose while we're kind of back on the topic of plot, we'll go on this. We'll go on this just to say. So, Cian, you have not finished the series.
No, unfortunately, I got to the Sports Day episode, but
okay. I suppose while we're kind of back on the topic of plot, we'll go on this. We'll go on this just to say. So, Cian, you have not finished the series.
No, unfortunately, I got to the Sports Day episode, but I didn't have time to get further than that, unfortunately. Okay. Because I cannot watch it around my baby for all the reasons we've discussed.
For literally the past, 20 minutes? Yeah, that's valid.
Being a good parent stopped you from finishing this show.
Yeah.
Which, hey man, ain't that anime? But I just want to kind of touch briefly on the final episode, where a lot of it's kind of a pretty systemically sitcom, episode to episode, bit by bit. The last episode really curves balls you with plot,
right? And
I suppose for you, Cian, we will shows up in the human world and takes Toru. Fully,
right.
Just steals her back to the dragon dimension. And there is a very dramatic 10 odd minutes where everyone in this world that we've come to know has to live without Toru. Kobayashi is basically going through loss, just living with Kana and just kind of going through the days and trying, basically being subtext for just becoming a single mother, until effectively Toru escapes from the Dragon World, comes back, and then immediately Damocles follows her, and they have to have a fight.
Right.
And it's surprisingly heavy for, it's very dramatic for the show that they kind of built. But I wanted to kind of use it to touch on how this show, while I haven't found any sources to really confirm this, it definitely uses, you can definitely read a lot of subtext.
Yeah, there's any narrative where you have characters hiding their identity to blend into society will allow you to sort of project onto it. Like X-Men does it too. Which, will inevitably project onto it kind of what you're looking for.
Which, hey, listen, fiction has subtext. Whoa is hardly a hot take. But, but in the narrative, it's that, her dad's telling her that dragons can't live among humans, and humans are lesser. And there is a very serious scene where this guy very much almost kills Kobayashi in a blink. It's a whole thing. But it's almost po-facedly being a woman's dad not allowing her to be in a gay relationship. That's what I read from it.
That it's as soon as you started describing it to me, I was like, yeah, I can see where this is going now. Which is strange because there wasn't really an antagonistic force in the series up to that point. Everyone kind of took Toru on the second turn up. Even Kobayashi's friend, whom she is consistently trying to kill, kind of accepted her for who she is.
Yeah. So it's just kind of touch on that this show is definitely using, for the most part, is using its narrative to convey a lot of these kind of things. I'd say a lot of young readers a lot of young people who are reading this probably are experiencing very similar events to this fantastic facsimile. So I think there is
and you don't get a lot of maybe I would actually, Kev, I'll put this to you. Are there a lot of stories like this in Japanese anime? Because I've had lengthy discussions with Lisa on her podcast about kind of gay representation in Japanese culture. And it often pops up as a joke, but it seems to be rarely sincere unless you get your odd Yuri on Ice. And even then, kind of male gazy, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it does. There's a very different complex relationship that Japanese material has to homosexual relationships than Western media. It's still complicated and sticky, but in a very kind of different light. And I'm not going to claim to know the first thing about Japanese sexual politics, but I do know it's still, it's not as openly regarded as it would be here in the West. Right. But it's not so much breast homosexuality, homosexuality, and thus is kind of in the same, where nobody really kind of talks about it. It comes up, but everyone's like, but that's just that. Like it's an issue. It's a really big problem over there as well. Now there isn't a whole lot, and there isn't a whole lot of shows that tackle it. Now there is a handful of outwardly gay romance anime. Like I think but again, only kind of a real select few that are actually sincerely about it and not playing it for laughs or playing it as.
Well, that's just it, because even on Pokemon back in the day, I remember kind of they'd have these kind of jokes where they kind of existed to make kind of male antagonists uncomfortable, not entirely unlike the way they treat the boy who thinks she's got a demon who's possessing him. What's her name? Quetzalcoatl, kind of like that way. Gay characters would exist to play that function.
Yeah, it's real uncomfortable and it's real weird.
Yeah.
The Persona games do both. They'll both have like characters who like it hints at that they are, that they don't have like that they're either homosexual or bisexual or anything like that. But then, and it'll be really sweet to them if they're like their main character. But the second it's an NPC or like someone who's not important to the game, they tear it down. Like even
don't get me started on gay rep in Persona. Man, it's got so much potential. Kanji was such a good character. Why can't you date boys in that game? I will make this podcast about this. Don't. Please don't.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to save this for when we inevitably do our Fire Emblem game corner, but I was amazed that there was any gay representation within that.
Please don't.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to save this for when we inevitably do our Fire Emblem game corner, but I was amazed that there was any gay representation within that.
Yeah.
Let alone based on kind of the way the kind of anime circuit kind of treats gay relationships, like.
Yeah, no, it's a real sticky issue, and I definitely want there to be more. And again, I find it just really hilarious that we are having this sincere discussion on Japanese gender and sexuality politics in an episode about Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid.
Well, I mean, there is something to be said for like if the premise wasn't so high concept and ridiculous, you almost kind of wouldn't find an avenue from which to kind of start this discussion, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get that.
A representation usually starts in either horror or comedy, and I think that's a good place to start. It's just about the politics of about sexual politics or your parents not being into it or whatever. It's like his, and that's also another reason why Persona fails at it in so many ways. It starts off like hinting at this, again, it seems like there's going to be a big revelation, and then it just leaves you on a dead note of, I guess,
we tried, gold star.
Big thumbs up, I guess.
I think to pivot away from this, just
let's talk about dragons again.
So actually, on the topic of specifically dragons, just one thing I noticed as I was watching it, most of the dragons in this show are in fact based off of actual mythological dragons.
Well,
If you
yeah,
didn't
I
know.
noticed Quetzalcoatl because that's
Yeah.
the famous one, obviously. But who are the other ones?
Actually, I think I found that the most obvious one was Fafnir. Fafnir is
Yeah.
a Norse dragon.
Oh, yeah, that name does ring a bell.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that name does ring a bell.
Yeah, so Fafnir is a Norse dragon. Quetzalcoatl is the feathered Aztec dragon, one of their major pantheons. Kana is actually based on Kana, and actually they mention it, I think, that her second name is in the show Kamui. And Kana Kamui is an Ainu dragon. Ainu people, just in case you don't know, because it's not brought up a lot, they are a civilization of people that originated in North Japan that were kind of a combination of Japanese and Russian societies. But because of big reasons, they'd be likened to, Aboriginal Australians or Native Americans. The big racist, we'll say.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are we to assume that heritage are supposed to inform their characterization, or is that just kind of picking famous ones or that kind of thing?
A little bit, actually.
I think it sounds as if it's kind of picking famous ones, but there is Kana Kamui is mythologically a lightning dragon, and Fafnir would have been a very destructive force. So there is a bit of a give and take.
Him playing Dark Souls definitely has a Norse twinge to it.
Yeah, but
it'd be more in the it'd be more in their character design, I'd imagine, and their color team, like the character's color team specifically, is where a lot of their name influence comes in.
Yeah, I think what it led me to was having this be a world where these the same myths that would exist in our world exist, but in this world, they're real and have been wandering the earth for millennia, just kind of being spotted by these various societies. The only spotted by these various societies. The only two then out of the Dragon cast that really didn't have a that don't seem to have a kind of a mythological counterpart are Toru and Elma. And I kind of had a bit of a dig around to see if I could find any info on this. There's really not much on Elma, but it is very distinct that she is a water serpent. But as far under my research, I couldn't find one that kind of was 1-to-1, and Toru being in dragon form, a very stereotypical large Western fire-breathing dragon, without a name to attach it, there's really no kind of a counterpart to be found.
Well, true, but there's lots of narratives where you have order dragons and chaos dragons, and usually there's a balanced dragon in between. So it could just be
all of them. She's the only kind of specifically Western dragon we see. So I think she could be kind of representing a whole, but that's just a theory. just an anime theory. Oh, I'm gonna get sued. Okay.
Just before you move on to the next point, can I just give a shout out to the music? Both the intro and the score are gorgeous.
Yeah.
The score is great. It's got this sort of Professor Layton Wind Rises type feel to it, where it's played on wind instruments and it's very kind of airy and breezy.
I'd even say it's a very versatile soundtrack. It really kind of does what it needs to when it needs to. The comedy, as I said, very kind of airy, light, bubbly. But then the kind of the more serene kind of romantic moments have, a very kind of orchestral, very love soundtrack. And, the dramatic moments have a big boisterous love soundtrack. And, the dramatic moments have a big boisterous go off with it. So it is very kind of it's a very versatile soundtrack composed by Masumi Ito. Just to shout out that. That's one thing I want to kind of do. I really want to kind of get the name recognition out.
Of course.
For these people.
Any other scores by Masumi Ito that I can look up?
That is a good question. You know what, Cian? That's a good question.
That'll be my homework for next week.
I'm just gonna keep saying that's a
Or
good
next
question
month.
until I.
Well, then we'll segue out of that pit I dug you in into the intro. It's one of my favorite anime intros I've seen in a long time because it is incredibly honest about what it is, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, but doing it with some of the most surrealism, some of the most surreal imagery I've seen in
what it is, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, but doing it with some of the most surrealism, some of the most surreal imagery I've seen in an intro, like that like text that kind of goes off the screen.
Yeah, or
Crazy.
like her head growing out of a tree. That reminded me a lot of like the early YouTube stuff, like where you just see people just making shapes out of things because they had the technology to. Like,
yeah, like this is again, it's definitely just like they saw an avenue where like, okay, we're making a really bubbly kind of comedy show. Let's just flex in the intro and just have like an old film reel with all their faces, or have Fafnir's head start blooming out of flowers.
Yeah, or that little kind of weird, almost borderline belly dance they do where they keep flipping between them and the dragons and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the little wiggle.
Yeah, that's it.
And the people T-posing into the sky.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised at how much I really liked the intro. I was not expecting it for me to watch it for every single episode, but I did. I usually don't.
It's just it's a tone set. It's a really good tone setter. Like it's that light upbeatedness that just kind of like gets you prepped to be like, just in a good fun mood.
And it should be worth saying, this is not a show where the tone is easy to pin down by any means.
I don't know. I'd stick my claim. I'd stick my flag in saying that like this is a pretty consistently just kind of upbeat show, barring what I mentioned about the big dramatic ending. But
yeah. But yeah, I must say, if I haven't said it already, I was the one dissenter who voted against this after last week's episode, and I'm really glad I lost. This was great fun.
So for transparency for the audience, I have been for this episode, I selected a handful of anime to present to the cast. And I would like to let it be known that I chose Cowboy Bebop and Yami Shibai, and the overwhelming votes went to Kobayashi Dragon Maid.
Okay. So
yeah, I was the lone dissenter who voted for Cowboy Bebop.
So, I would have voted for Bebop if I hadn't seen it already, and if Lisa hadn't talked about like dragon titties. That's her words. The dragon titties.
This is what happens.
You have my attention.
We're gonna start throwing shade on Lisa and Katie now. They're the ones that were gung-hoing dragon titties, and now they're not here. Just leaving three lads to talk about horny dragon anime.
And to discuss gender politics.
Yeah.
No matter what the next episode is about.
Okay, so to start kind of wrapping things up. So as it stands, as we mentioned earlier, the manga has been still ongoing in a variety of forms. Actually, the main series is still in publication, but the same author now is also producing two side series based in the same universe. So one kind of more focusing on Kana and one more focusing on Elma. And it was later revealed, as far as I know, last year, that a second season had in fact been greenlit. However, and this is where things take a tragic turn. On July 18th last year, Kyoto Animations was the victim of a terrible arson attack, killing 35 of its staffers and irreparably damaging a lot of produced work in the studio. And unfortunately, one of the victims was, in fact, Yasuhiro Takamoto, the series director. So as of right now, between the death of the lead series director and the kind of the current state of the studio, still reeling and still trying to pick up the pieces of where it is, the current state of a sequel series is up in the air. and truly just for the talent that having seen a handful of the series that the studio produces, I really hope that they can bounce back, because one thing Kyoto Animations is specifically as a production studio, they enjoy, I think. Like
what other kind of titles have they made?
Another one would be Violet Evergarden, which is a very kind of very sincerely heartfelt romance story, kind of a period piece, or series like K-On! Or Nichijou or Lucky Star, which are very bubbly, energetic comedies.
And as you said, those are hard to come by.
Yeah, and Kyoto definitely have a kind of a pedigree for having definitely that set mood, and Kobayashi absolutely fits in with that repertoire. So
but it is a terrible tragedy that because I mean, even though that wasn't a malicious attack, I felt the same thing when I heard about Aardman burning down and all of the Chicken Run characters getting destroyed. It's terrible when a company that specifically exists to bring joy to loads and loads of people is the victim of something like this. And I think I mean, thank God you have Crunchyroll and stuff, but I think we should support kind of studios like this in so much as possible when they need us, because we have gotten by the sounds of this episode, we have gotten a lot of joy from this show, and I really hope that they're somehow able to bounce back, not just because I want to see more, but because you want them to be well,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it's definitely to look on this as much as you can look on this the tragedy as just kind of with sadness and anger, rightfully so. I think it's always kind of good to look at what they what in this scenario, what they produced, and celebrate it. I think that's kind of, and that's one thing I was thinking when I was doing my research. I wanted to use this episode to celebrate and absolutely overflowing with creativity.
Yeah, this definitely feels like a production where you could tell everyone was enjoying themselves. I mean, I know there's a lot of kind of behind the scenes stuff in any Japanese anime with crunch and all that kind of stuff, but certainly at the top level of this, it seems like everyone involved with this was really giving it their all, and it just radiates joy. I really enjoyed looking forward to watching this every single time.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I suppose just we'll throw out there, does anybody have any final thoughts on this?
Watch it.
Yeah, typically I'm not into moe ecchi stuff like this, but it was a lot of fun, and I can imagine after you watch something fairly heady, it would be a nice, relaxing. I also want to point out moe ecchi stuff like this, but it was a lot of fun, and I can imagine after you watch something fairly heady, it would be a nice, relaxing. I also want to point out that it was directed by the same guy who directed Full Metal Panic, so that's all.
Oh really? How did I miss? Because I looked up a couple of his credits, and he was a lot of lead animated. He was a lead animator in a lot of projects.
Let me just double check. That. Oh yeah, no, Tim.
Jeez, I completely overlooked that.
I'd say his name, but I would absolutely butcher it, and I don't want to. I don't want to do that to myself.
Once again, that is Yasuhiro Takamoto.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's for sure just even if you just watch an episode at a time, just take 20 minutes and just have a fun time. You could very easily just watch a random episode as well and just have a good time.
Yeah, it's a shame the series that, assuming the quality stays high, could just go and go and go, because again, I found myself just watching 10 minutes here one night and then 30 minutes the next night, and not beholden to even episodes. I felt I'll just watch one skit, I'll just watch this, and there's very few anime shows like that.
Well, if you're really feeling more, there is the manga, which, as I mentioned, is currently running up to 20 volumes.
Wow.
And is still in publication. So if you want the more kind of piecemeal, there's you can look at you can just read a chapter at a time of the manga and get same kind of 5-10 minute experience. So that is there as well if you really want more. Okay, so I suppose in wrap up, so for those of you that have listened and feel like you really do want to continue, want to actually watch it by our recommendation, as it is currently streaming on Crunchyroll. We're not sponsored. Don't. We're not plugging, please. I just want people to know kind of where you can access it.
But if you want to sponsor us, I mean, we're open to
Crunchyroll.
discussions.
We will shill.
Yeah. I mean, you've gotten every other YouTuber. We're just sitting here,
We're just on the East
every
Coast of
YouTuber
Ireland,
is either Audible or Crunchyroll, and we'd be more open to you. Audible can reach out first, so better hurry up. Like,
you know what? I'll take Crunchyroll over Amazon. That's okay.
No arguments.
I suppose. Okay, so in wrap up, Cian, is there anything you would like to plug for the end?
You mean not involved with Kobayashi, like?
I mean, if you got more Kobayashi thoughts.
All right, I'll say at the time of recording, episode 9 of the Game Corner has gone out. It's got a comedian of the Game Corner has gone out. It's got a comedian named Alex J. Byrne in it, and a wonderful internet guy, Neil Cochran. The show's been really picking up a lot of hype recently, so if you want to check it out and listen to us talk about games during the lockdown, or indeed if you fancy trying your hand at being on a podcast, hit me up on the Game Corner. I love hearing from new people, so I'm just going to say that there. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Sounds great. And Keith, do you have anything you want to plug for us?
My band Horrenda is dropping an album on the 3rd of July. I think it's the 3rd of July. It'll be on Bandcamp, Spotify, and all that.
If I'm not mistaken, that comes out. If I'm not mistaken, actually, this episode will be out by then.
Oh, so today. And the last thing I want to show is something that I'm not even involved with. Is the new conspiracy podcast on Nerd to Know Media. I'm involved with is the new conspiracy podcast on Nerd to Know Media. I'm loving that.
Oh, I've been listening to that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I highly recommend. I don't know the name of it. I'm terrible at this.
Into the Unknown.
Dara's one.
Into the Unknown. Yeah, exactly. Dara's one. Into the Dark. I think that's it.
From the Dark.
From the Dark.
We got.
No, we're all on the network. You think we know the names?
I love it. I thought it was a lot of fun. The live streaming it is great crack, and anyone who wants to get who wants to talk about conspiracies, join the live chat and have fun.
Yeah, and if you can't catch it live, watch it on YouTube, because I tried it on Spotify and you guys talk about visual sources and stuff, so it's well worth going the extra mile to go to YouTube. Like,
yeah, that definitely. The show is more formatted for a visual. Thing, because they'll bring up docs and references. But I suppose if you've already researched the topic, you can probably go off it. But they're pulling up stuff I haven't even heard of before, and
Dara's got like fingers in a lot of pies. He has a lot of deep cuts.
He's also in that band I'm in, so
that's amazing, man. That's really, really cool. Obviously, sorry.
And I'm playing bass on his new solo album that's coming out as well. But
Dara has a solo album? I have not heard about that.
He's working on everything.
Hot damn. Yeah. No, our almighty Ubermensch is truly a force to be reckoned with. That's great, man. Obviously, don't forget to check out Lisa's show, Doing It for the Exposure. Sorry, Katie's show, Doing It for the Exposure. Lisa's show, Straight Outta Canto. And obviously, incredible. Like, Cian and everyone else is doing truly fantastic work. We're having a great time over here.
And you are too, Kev. Don't sell yourself short, like.
Oh, thank you. I am humble. Is my no, I'm not. I am an egoist maniac, and I will take the praise.
This is a very honest show.
Thank you all for listening. This has been Anime Crash Course, and we will see you all next month.
Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.